Tell me, why did you want to speak up about this?
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention my viral joke tweet making fun of Adam
That
Newman.
was good too. It was a little more inside baseball, but you could explain.
It's all good. My comedy career is my next act. But, I don't think anyone was really surprised that Adam Newman was able to raise a mega round of funding. I think what really struck a chord with a lot of founders, especially women founders, is that he was given this second chance when so many women and underrepresented minorities aren't even given a first chance. What other big, bold ideas and founders could we uncover if we invested in people besides white men?
I've spoken to a lot of people this week and a lot of people who didn't want to speak publicly about this, don't want to say anything negative about Andreessen Horowitz. Why do you think people won't talk about it?
I don't think this is unique to Andreessen Horowitz. I think in venture capital as a whole, there's been a really big emphasis on, sort of growth at all costs and, burning lots of cash on your way to the top. And I actually am pretty optimistic because I think that is really changing. And I think that will serve women founders really well. Women get just 2% of the venture capital. And so we have always had to operate, in a profitable way or on the path to profitability. And now that is finally getting some respect. It's not just growth and burning lots of cash. It's actually growth that's sustainable. And that's what we've always done at Winnie. And I think a lot of women founders have always done.
I think part of the risk is, if you come forward, would you ever get a check from Andreessen Horowitz, which is, one of the most prestigious venture capital firms in Silicon Valley? Why take that risk? That you might never get funding from them.
I think, either way, this is not anything having to do with just Andreessen Horowitz. I think a lot of firms across the board, this is an industry-wide number that 2% of the venture capital goes to women founders, and even less if you look at, underrepresented women founders. So I don't think this is unique to them. I think this is just a great example and time to say, hey, what about all the women who weren't given second chances after they made a big bet that didn't work out?
Or the many that never got a first chance.
And many that didn't even get a first chance. And I think now is actually a really good time to talk about it because there is this greater emphasis, aside from this case, a much greater emphasis on profitability and sustainable growth.
You and I talked when you were launching Winnie. What has your experience been like raising money, not just as a female founder, but a founder raising money for a marketplace for childcare?
It's been rough. I think childcare has historically been really underfunded and undervalued and overlooked and all the things. It's a $90 billion market, childcare for kids under 6 in the US alone annually, so it's massive. But the money just really hasn't been there. And I think, when you're building in an industry that's so big and so entrenched and you're trying to innovate, it takes a long time. And so a lot of what was invested in the past were these really quick wins and you want to grow really fast at all costs. And that's not the way you innovate in childcare. It's just not going to work. It's so entrenched. It's so big. It's so fragmented. And so we've, taken a slower growth approach. We've been at this for almost 7 years. We were really fortunate to find investors who believed in kind of the long haul. And now, we are the leading marketplace for group childcare and early education. But it's taken almost 7 years to get there. It did not happen overnight. And we had to be really careful with how we grew so that we would have the time and the runway to get to where we are now.
What's the funding environment like now? We're in the middle of this big market correction. You're hearing about down rounds and flat rounds and layoffs.
Yeah.
Is it harder than it's been?
If I could give advice to other companies, it would be, if you can get to profitability, get there. Yeah. I think we feel like we have so much more predictability in our own revenue and growth than in what investors are going to like or be able to invest in, or can they raise from their LPs, that we're focusing internally on just our business, and we're really fortunate to be in a position to do that. We've never been able to count on the next round of funding. I think there have been companies, especially in the childcare space, that have raised more and grown faster, and they're finding themselves in a tough spot right now because that next round of funding is, it's not just out there, easy to get.
What's the state of the childcare industry right now, post-COVID, post-pandemic? What are you seeing?
One of the biggest issues right now in childcare is the teacher shortage, so the early educator shortage. So we hear about that all the time with, public education, but it's even worse in childcare, and it's really, really affecting these businesses. They're having to close classrooms, take less children into their program. It's creating this huge supply issue. So that's kind of one of the things we're now really focused on at Winnie, is helping daycares and preschools hire staff in addition to filling their open spaces. Because if they don't have the teachers, they can't fill spaces. They can't meet ratios.
So, what are the problems that we're not talking about, and how do you see those problems being resolved?
Problems in childcare? I mean, I think one big problem is the lack of investment. It does take investment to innovate. We see this in pretty much every other industry. So it's hard when you have to grow just based on your profits. It's slower and it takes more time. So I would absolutely love to see more investment, not just from venture capitalists, though that would be nice, but also from employers, from the government. Build Back Better was supposed to be this great big influx of cash to childcare. None of that is happening. And so, there is really a lack of investment going towards childcare. And I think it can come from many different sources, but someone's got to step up here.
I also want to ask you about Twitter. You've worked at a lot of different tech companies before you started your own. You worked at Twitter. What do you think about Elon Musk potentially owning Twitter? Would Elon be good for Twitter?
He actually just recently tweeted something like, being a mom, which he's a dad, so it's a little weird he's tweeting about moms, but being a mom is just as important as any career. And to me, that's just kind of like an underhanded way of saying, moms, you go stay at home and take care of kids, leave us men to the careers. I don't think that's a fit for Twitter's culture. It's I haven't worked there in a while, but I am sure they would not agree with that kind of statement or approach towards, they hire lots of women, they have lots of moms working in leadership roles. They have been big supporters and advocates of getting more women in leadership. So that just, to me, seems really not aligned with their culture at all.
What about the product itself? I mean, I'm sure even you would agree that, potentially there could have been more innovation at Twitter over the last decade. They could be making more money. They could have grown a lot faster. Maybe they need an Elon Musk.
Maybe they
to
need
shake
more,
things up.
Maybe they need more women, more moms working there. I think also, this has just been a massive distraction for the employees. So when you talk about innovation, I mean, how can you possibly focus on 100% on innovating and making the product better for users if you have this massive distraction going on at the same time? So I don't think this has been good on that front either.